find yourself in a deserted mall, alone, surrounded by a desolate atmosphere that haunts your senses. As you explore, finding loose change along the way, a dark arcade tempts you in. The quarters you found on the floor allow you to start a game on the last working machine. This whole time you've been lost trying to find a way home, if it even still exists, painfully alone, with only the growls and the shadows in the dark to keep you company. Desperate to ease the suffering of this loneliness, you boot up the game. Everything goes black. All you can fathom is a horrid growl as you feel yourself flung through the abyss. Suddenly, you hear a driving retro beat as visual shapes and colors take form. A bustling arcade surrounds you, filled with flashy lights and sounds along with some colorful characters. One of them, Sonia, tells you that you're the new victim of the arcade. Your flesh remains unaltered by the weird energy here. One patron of the arcade can barely string together a sentence. Some of them outright threaten to harm you. You look out a window to see a lake of lava, skeletons floating as they writhe in pain. It suddenly dawns on you. The mind-numbing, high-stimulation environment finally gets to you as you realize, this is hell. In an attempt to find solace, your soul has been lost. You have only yourself to blame. The machine may have been overwhelmingly tempting, but you are the one who paid into it. Now you're not just alone, but you're surrounded by people who couldn't give less of a shit about you. As you continue exploring the impossibly small arcade, you find the prize counter, some stale candy, a few charms, and oh look, it's your soul. You can easily get it for the price of 500,000 tickets. A seemingly impossible task, but there's something about the song that's been playing on loop since you got here. Its driving groove fills you with determination. So, with no other choice, you set out to play into the system that brought you here in the first place, and approach the only game that seems to be working in this hellhole. Okay, how many tickets did I get? Fuck. Okay, time for a break. As you step away from the allure of the game, you manage to tune out all the attention-grabbing stimuli. Finally, you take advantage of the tiny safe space you've managed in your head to regain your senses. Bit by bit, you start to find tickets on the ground throughout the arcade. As you pick them up, you quickly realize that this is getting you way more tickets than playing Asteroids. Also, these tickets seem to proliferate as you collect more. Some even appear on top of the shiniest game, the Typhoon machine. You know, this thing has racked up some pretty big jackpots. It still works, but there's so much dried soda caked onto it that it's physically out of order. You'll need some industrial cleaner to make it usable. Actually, there was something that caught your attention while at the prize counter. A drug of some kind. No, hey, it's industrial cleaner. And I found so many tickets on the ground that I can easily buy it. Finally, some good luck. Let's try to keep this momentum rolling. Oh, one sec. Let's try and keep this momentum rolling and ride this typhoon. Just gotta hit the center. My timing's never been the best, but at least I have an eternity to practice. 10 seconds later? Fuck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Give them tickets to mama. Sorry about that. I don't know what came over me. Excuse me. That's right, you little slut. Spray them tickets all over me. Alright, I came. Time to get my soul. The music dies. The lights go out. The prizes are gone, along with the other patrons and everything. You thought you were already in the void of the abyss, but now you see the arcade for what it is. An empty dead end of a room that leads only to damnation and whatever creatures lurk within. As your eyes adjust to the dark, spectral particles struggling to resemble humanoid forms start to surround you. You try to reach out to one, but it remains motionless as it pleads. Help me. As you feel the vibrational disturbance of the cries for help, you notice a cold emptiness swelling up within you. The soul you only just recovered begins to tremble. The weird energy in this room is starting to get to you. You start towards the exit as if guided by instinct, or maybe fear. As you leave, You turn back for one final look at the fate you may have been doomed to, had you not found the strength and the will to escape. Wow, that got kinda heavy. Let's lighten things up a bit. Arcade Woah is a demo on the newest haunted PS1 demo disc, Spectral Mall. As a game, it's wonderful. The art style coupled with its game mechanics make for a realistically whimsical arcade experience. I caught myself salivating when I got to the Typhoon machine. Even tasted blue cotton candy out of nowhere. I didn't even know it was going to give me a bunch of tickets. The creator of the game, Vladimir Lor, I hope I pronounced that right, obviously knows how to hack the brain if I just randomly start tasting cotton candy. This game also made me feel something I'm very well acquainted with. The struggle of dealing with addiction. Not that arcade games are all that addictive unless you're a kid. Even then, you're more likely to be addicted to video games or the internet, according to the studies from the before times. However, there's no better stage to explore the final destination of addiction than a high-energy, loud, and colorfully dim arcade hall fueled by capitalism. Wait, what's this? Get this shit out of here. Firstly, the isolation of roaming an empty hall primes you to feel helpless. There's no support system you can rely on. This kind of alienation can be a major factor that drives people to addictive practices. According to clinical psychologist Amy Rokach, some authors have concluded that dependence on drugs is an actual substitute for dependence on others. This makes Arcade Woah a thematic match for this demo disc, and the functionality of unlocking it is reminiscent of how you are ultimately the one responsible for buying into the addiction. Admit it, we're all addicted to content. In actuality, hardly anyone consciously decides to become an addict. Relative addiction theory suggests that the lack of a social support system, i.e. being isolated in a mall, is a major factor of addiction. In his essay, The Lonely Addict, professor of psychology Howard Rachlin states, relative addiction theory says that addicts are addicts because they are lonely. Distinctive properties of social support, the way it contributes to present and future utility, may act along with substance consumption to cause addiction. The local utility, as it's referred to, is essentially how much you weigh potential consequences of your actions. Eating candy corn without thinking of the stomachache you'll get later is having a smaller local utility, being more impulsive rather than self-controlled. Or to put it another way, having nothing to lose makes one think less about the consequences of playing a game that tells you it costs you your soul. It can't be that bad. I'm already alone and frightened. Uh-oh. The mall is the social environment, and the arcade machine is the dealer trying to take advantage of your unfortunate situation. A more direct comparison from the game comes from Sonia, saying that your flesh hasn't been altered by the weird energy. Especially with cigarettes, prolonged abuse can cause noticeable changes to your physical health. Beyond drugs, addiction can also cause changes in how you carry yourself. You can become irritable and start to prioritize the addiction over your own well-being. That's what happened to the other patrons. They became fellow victims of addiction. Falling into addiction is similar to being trapped in a deep grave that you've dug for yourself. That's not to say that addiction is always the fault of the victim. Sometimes, most of the time, the cycle of addiction is pushed onto its victims by a capitalistic society that supplies the masses with addictive substances. I said get out of here. I don't have sources for you yet. In the arcade, and it might be because it's just the demo, you're only given one possible solution to dig yourself out: asteroids. You could also buy more into the system and spend tickets on some of the prizes. That gets you a multiplier going. But they're so expensive that they're almost not worth getting, especially if you start paying attention to your surroundings. You're probably wondering why I didn't point out the tickets scattered about sooner than I did. To be honest, I didn't notice them. I was so distracted and overstimulated by the environment that I was literally blind to the obvious solution. The same could be said when you're laser focused on figuring out how to satiate your craving. I should probably start saying I, cause no cap, I'm talking about my own experiences with addiction. Thinking outside the box also helped me find the industrial cleaner, a not so hidden key that unlocks a new strategy to help overcome the trials and tribulations that is drug addiction. The last thing I want to focus on is what happened when I finally got my soul back. I was able to look around with sober eyes and see the addiction for what it really was. It's just an empty solution to help alleviate the pain that drove me to such extremes in the first place. A big factor of my addictive personality was the isolation and alienation I felt growing up as a closeted trans girl. That, coupled with toxic masculinity, among other factors, made me feel like there was nothing else I could do to make the pain stop except lean into my addictions. Feared stigma and loneliness anxiety, defending against the fear of experiencing loneliness, may result in attempts to deny the experience either outright or by distancing oneself from the pain, the consequent feeling of failure, and from the restlessness and desperation which loneliness entails. Dealing with addiction is challenging, and one of the biggest factors of curing it is having a social support system. That's the worst part about how we demonize addiction and vilify addicts. Our society fosters a fuck you got mine mentality, and if you can't manage the difficulties of existing on your own, then you're seen as deserving to fall through the cracks of society. It's the fear of rejection by society that oftentimes pushes people into these cycles. All the vilification prevents many good faith support systems from pulling addicts out of their spiral. It is widely accepted by laymen and researchers alike that rebuilding one's social network and establishing close relationships are among the most effective ways of coping with loneliness. However, it is suggested that although social support may have been available to help drug users, they may have perceived it as helping them give up drugs, rather than appreciate its effects in helping them cope with loneliness. When you're placed under pressure in a dire situation, like being trapped in a spooky mall, it's harder to consider more local utility, which makes it easier to fall into addictive trappings such as arcade woe. When addictive behaviors become vilified, it's easier to find yourself in such a situation where succumbing to the addiction becomes the more favorable path. This is why stimulating behaviors should not be vilified. I joked earlier about how we're all addicted to content, but that's been a fact of life before the inception of capitalism or even society. I asked the Twitch streamer Radhom if society at large is addicted to content, and here's what he had to say about it.
No more or less than we've ever been. We've always had stories. We've always had tales, legends, myths and songs. We're storytelling apes. It's one of our greatest evolutionary advantages.
In the same way we use stories to numb the eldritch horror of existence, stimulating behaviors are a primal response to avoid various sources of pain, such as loneliness. Using tools and resources like this is what has helped humanity grow and evolve. However, it is easy to become dependent on these tools when your environment seemingly abandons and vilifies you. That is why it's important to foster inclusivity in our communities, to show compassion for each other. The more society pushes people away, the more tempting the arcade machine gets, welcoming its victims with open arms. Oh hey, you made it to the end of the video. That's pretty cool of you. Be sure to leave a like, and even subscribe if you want to. Or just leave me a comment telling me that I was completely wrong in the reading of this game. I was going based off of how it made me feel, so the interpretation probably isn't the best it can be. I also do other stuff, so make sure to check out the links in the description, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!